Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. The Odyssey is finally out in theaters, and it's time to talk about it. The hype in the media is all true. This was the greatest movie in the history of ever. So shut up about it.
Shut up! Everyone just shut the up!
If you live under a rock, or you just don't care, then you would know that everything surrounding this movie in recent months has been an incredible marketing campaign.
Telemachus,
Penelope,
Antinous,
Odysseus,
Athena,
Telemachus,
Calypso, Penelope,
Menelaus,
and Helen of Troy.
Odyssey.
After the Iliad,
hidden the horse.
won the war. Yeah, I'm serious.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Everything from Daddy Odysseus,
They're pining for a daddy.
Black Helen of Troy launching 1,000 luring center schemes, Botox face Penelope, and the totally not a 5-foot, 100-pound woman Greek warrior Elliot Page. And I know what you're thinking. Here's another incel and his irrelevant thoughts on race and equality and blah, blah, blah. My ass.
Shut when you think about it.
But I'm glad you're thinking on it. So let's touch on it. The question I always ask in the independent film space is, who asked for this movie? Or, who is this movie for? And while no one was specifically begging for another adaptation of the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan was coming off hot of the historic success of Oppenheimer, where he took home Best Picture and Best Director while the film swept the acting categories. So it would be safe to assume that the global population was at least deeply curious to see what Christopher Nolan was going to do next, which brings us to modernity.
Oh shit, here we go again.
In a world plagued by sloppy, boring, and aggressively generic modern remakes and adaptations, Nolan dared answer the question absolutely nobody was asking. What if Homer's Odyssey was adapted for modern audiences? So if you're still with me, right about now, you're either listening intently or you're waiting for me to become the racist, sexist, incel chud who regularly attends Nazi rallies with Graham Plattner. You want me to cry about the cultural accuracy of a Bronze Age myth. You are practically drooling for the race swap discourse because that is the easiest argument to have and the easiest argument to dismiss.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
Truth be told, nobody actually cares about that shit other than blue-haired land whales and the people whose entire careers depend on pretending everybody else does. But don't worry, I'll touch on it, because we now find ourselves at a pivotal turning point in the industry. The last few weeks alone have seen massive studio projects flopping like dying fish on a dock by the Aegean Sea.
Okay, I see what you did there.
Long gone are the days of glorious, eye-candy action epics that actually filled movie theaters. Instead, we are stuck in an era of pointless, crappy cash grabs that barely linger in your memory by the following week. Seriously, what was Avatar 3 even about? So, if you think I'm wrong, just remember that the first Transformers movie came out 19 years ago. We can only go up from there, right? If I was a betting man in 2007, absolutely. But we're in 2026. So you get Desert Warrior and Masters of the Universe, The Bride, Greenland 2, Crime 101, In the Gray, Deep Water, Animal Farm, Mother Mary, The Death of Robin Hood, I Love Boosters, Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, The Breadwinner, and How to Make a Killing. 2 weeks ago was the abysmal failure of Supergirl. Last week was the abysmal failure shot-for-shot live-action remake of Moana, which nobody asked for except for The Rock. So, understand that everything this year has proven a very specific point about what actually fills theater seats. I think The Odyssey was always going to prove a massive point that a lot of people are completely overlooking in. What actually carries a film? Which brings us right back to Christopher Nolan. While there is plenty of superficial controversy surrounding this film, the vast majority of people buying a ticket did so for one reason. They like the director, they trust his brand, and they wanted to see what he could do with this story. Christopher Nolan is the primary reason people are going to a theater for this movie, not the cast, which is where I'm going with this. So unless you're sitting there going, nah, does it for me. Let's stop pretending this wasn't the entire marketing strategy. Did Nolan really truly defy expectations and prove that a director's vision is the absolute last true anchor left in Hollywood? Or did he fall into the void of once great directors who cashed in and sold out their fans all in the name of the message? So let's get one thing straight. This isn't my review. It's not a review. Right now, the corporate critic shills have this movie sitting at a near perfect 96% certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. But if you look closer at that number, it's built on a measly 193 reviews. In the grand scheme of things, that doesn't mean shit. Those 193 echo chamber opinions don't speak for the millions of actual moviegoers voicing their visceral opposition. We're talking about real people calling it, and I quote, unwatchable, anti-white, anti-Western trash, end quote, and theatergoers actually walking out mid-screening. So look at the facts, not the manufactured hype. It is safe to say that at one point in our lives, we have all bought into the genius of Christopher Nolan. Okay. Maybe collectively agree to forget Tenet existed, and sure, The Dark Knight Rises had its issues. But Memento, Insomnia, Batman Begins, The Prestige, Inception, The Dark Knight, Interstellar, hell, even Dunkirk and Oppenheimer. The man has earned his blank check, and that's exactly why this hurts his fans. I am old enough to remember just a couple of years ago when everybody on social media was completely losing their minds because Oppenheimer had a mostly white cast with people genuinely ready to throw hands over historical accuracy. Oppenheimer was based on a biography of a real man populated by real physicists with actual photographs and casted for resemblance to the historical record. The principal cast was almost entirely white.
Nice.
Because the Manhattan Project's leadership was almost entirely white.
Nice.
We got bangers like, and I quote, Oppenheimer is white, male, so male, courtesy of Medium.
Who?
And, I quote, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer has an all-white cast, end quote, courtesy of Fortress of Solitude.
Who?
Like, seriously, off with this. What do you want people to do today? Dye their skin to satisfy your miserable checklist? It's pathetic. These land whales looked at a historical event rooted in the 1940s and have thrown a temper tantrum because reality didn't match a modern corporate HR seminar. It's like getting mad at a World War II documentary because the soldiers aren't wearing Apple Watches.
That doesn't make sense.
It is pure, unadulterated delusion. But back in the real world, the outrage didn't mean a damn thing. Nolan didn't change a single role to satisfy a quota and refused to compromise on historical accuracy. And what happened? The movie swept the Oscars, won Best Picture, and grossed $1 billion. Fidelity to the source cost Nolan absolutely nothing. In fact, it bought him everything. Yet, flash forward to today, where Nolan takes a 2,700-year-old Greek text and suddenly that exact same fidelity is thrown out the window? Now it's entirely optional, and we are just supposed to shut our mouths and blindly swallow it all in the name of modernity? Don't insult my intelligence. You don't abandon $1 billion winning formula by accident. That isn't a coincidence. That's a deliberate sellout to the corporate studio machine. And before the one person hate watching this rushes to the comments to call me a racist for pointing that out, just relax. Put the pitchfork down because I'm getting to the actual data. But Sean, it's just an adaptation. It isn't based on real people. It's based on some abstract historical concept of beauty and blah, blah, blah. My ass. Save it. I'm not here to review the film. I couldn't care less. I didn't read the Odyssey or the Iliad, and I don't need a pretentious art degree from Yale to see exactly what's happening here.
I'd be like, so Homer, how do you feel about the screen time given to these women, considering how little you spend with them? Okay.
And then do you lean forward and look at him like that?
Yes, like, remember us? Seriously, what the fuck are you doing?
This isn't just an adaptation. It's a modern adaptation of a modern interpretation wrapped in feminist garbage. And And of course, we have Zendaya, the reigning queen of having exactly one facial expression, to stand by and smugly confirm for us. Which brings us to the absolute laughingstock state of access media. Take a look at Variety. They recently put out 2 articles that perfectly encapsulate the sheer, unadulterated brain rot of modern entertainment journalism. On one hand, they give us a glowing, reverent piece about the live-action Moana remake, which is going to lose $200 million, by lecturing us on how the filmmakers worked tirelessly to honor Polynesian culture and traditions because representation matters. So if you don't match the exact ethnic makeup of the source material, you're committing a cultural crime. But turn the page to their coverage of Greek classics and suddenly Variety sings a completely different tune, running headlines claiming that anyone demanding accuracy is just part of a Elon Musk troll army. Ah yes, the classic corporate media shield. If a paying audience expects the foundational texts of Western civilization to actually look Greek, they aren't consumers with standards. No, they are a weaponized troll army deployed by a literal trillionaire. It's the exact same corporate gaslighting we saw with Netflix's Cleopatra. We are stuck in this bizarre, hypocritical loop where ethnic accuracy is a sacred, non-negotiable boundary for every single culture on Earth, except when it comes to European history or Greek mythology. You know, white people, slightly white people, fidelity is silly and accuracy is myth. And anyone pointing out the double standard is an incel who needs to be silenced.
Shut when you think about it.
Recently, Andy Serkis sat down with the BBC to discuss The Hunt for Gollum, another movie no one asked for or wants, and was asked why his cast didn't fit the modern corporate checklist. He told them flat out, and I'm paraphrasing here, Tolkien was influenced by Norse mythology. We aren't doing a politically correct box-ticking version of the film, end quote. And how did the trades react? Because Serkis falls in line with their politics? They didn't deploy the troll army narrative this time, but instead wrote an article titled, and I quote, "Star Anya Taylor-Joy has not read the Lord of the Rings books yet, but is about to soon," end quote. I'm at a loss here, people. Where even are we? Ah, yes. The studios and the trades desperately need you to rage tweet about race swapping because as long as everyone is screaming about identity politics, nobody notices that the emperor has no clothes. And let's be entirely clear here. The public did not invent this bad faith casting, which gets us closer and closer to the real point. Understand that all the YouTube creators that the mainstream media loves to hate, Film Threat, Neurotic, The Critical Drinker, Geeks and Gamers, Heels vs. Babyface, RK Outpost, Disparu, Verbal Riot, Eric July, George the Giant Slayer, all the above, the list is endless. None of these people built this culture war. Hollywood built it, industrialized it, defended, and then turn around and blame the audience that actually shows and has been doing so for decades, all while Hollywood completely refuses to look inward at their failing system. Which brings us right back to Christopher Nolan. Is his latest epic accurate by any known definition of the word? 100% no. Again, this isn't a review. So forget who said what in the promotional interviews, because anyone claiming, including Nolan himself, that this film is aiming for any semblance of literacy authenticity is flat out lying to you. Nolan really said with a straight face and told us he cast Travis Scott because rap music is the modern equivalent of ancient Greek oral poetry.
What the actual fuck did you just say to me right now? Get out of my sight. Get out of my sight.
Combine that with Robert Pattinson saying the word daddy, and you realize we've officially crossed the line from mythic epic into bizarre, disjointed assembly line of famous human beings. And that brings us to the real $250 million question. If the text is a mess, and the marketing is a lie, and the aesthetic is a superhero fraud, what is actually keeping this movie from completely collapsing? The studios want you to believe it's the star power. For decades, the industry standard assumption was that you needed a massive, well-rounded ensemble of superb, bulletproof leading names to carry an epic to glory. Think back to the early 2000s with movies like Gladiator, Troy, or dare I say, Alexander. Those films understood the assignment by relying on larger-than-life figures operating on pure, unadulterated star charisma to carry the weight of the story. Now look at movies today. If you take away all the casting controversies of the Odyssey alone, the underlying economic reality remains exactly the same, and this ensemble isn't carrying shit. Hollywood is still operating on a dead, 30-year-old outdated blueprint in that you throw a random collection of A-listers, pop stars, and internet influencers at the screen like a shield. It just becomes hoping that a star-studded cast can mask a hollow corporate sellout script. The era of the bulletproof movie star is over. Putting 10 famous people together doesn't guarantee box office draw anymore because audiences can smell the desperation from a mile away. Big names don't carry a film anymore. They just clutter it. The days of Ocean's 11, The Royal Tenenbaums, The Departed, Tropic Thunder, and Inglourious Basterds are long over. Let the Odyssey be the perfect, definitive example of how this broken formula finally killed the movie star.
Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
Which leaves us in this bizarre love-hate relationship with the older generation of legendary directors. We look at guys like Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg, Quentin Tarantino, and Martin Scorsese as the last line of defense. They're the only ones left with the clout to get original, massive epics greenlit. But even that is fading. Scorsese's last $200 million movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, was an abysmal failure. It had peak star power in Leonardo DiCaprio and way past his prime Robert De Niro, and was loved by the show critics, but it bored audiences to tears. It proves that even the old masters can't revive the corpse of star power, which is exactly why Christopher Nolan stands alone. He's the only filmmaker right now who has realized that in the modern era, the director has to become the franchise. Audiences aren't buying tickets for the actors in his movies. They're showing up purely because of his name. But it's a double-edged sword. We want to support the last of the cinematic titans, but instead we end up forced to defend an industry that keeps pumping out these disjointed, historically illiterate, star-studded circuses purely to keep the idea of cinema alive. Nolan is single-handedly dragging this entire fraud movie across the finish line on his back, relying entirely on the goodwill of his personal brand. It is the ultimate director as auteur carry job. His massive success hides the fact that without his name to legitimize the theatrical experience, the studio's broken movie star era wouldn't just be dead, it would be buried. Which brings us to the ultimate reality of the modern industry, and my point in all of this, the cast.
Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
This is what I always tell people that are building in the independent space right now. Cast is no longer the anchor for any film anymore, whether you're talking about a major studio machine or a scrappy indie project. We have officially reached a point where big names mean absolutely nothing to the box office. And if you think this is just a fluke and that even a once great director can simply conjure star power out of thin air, look at what just happened to Steven Spielberg. The undisputed king of summer blockbusters dropped Disclosure Day only about a month ago with an elite ensemble. And what happened? It collapsed 65% in its second weekend because word of mouth got out that the movie sucks and the audience realized a legendary director and a glossy cast can't save a hollow script. The brand name of Spielberg isn't a cheat code anymore. How do I know? Well, give me a one-line synopsis of Disclosure Day.
Well. Next question.
Oh, you can't?
You could. Shut the fuck up.
Which brings us right back to Christopher Nolan and my points. The modern movie star is a complete myth. The Odyssey is described by the shills as Nolan's magnum opus. But if you took his name off his film, the entire machine would flop on opening weekend, and I would bet my house on that. If you really sit back and think about it, nobody bought an IMAX ticket because they were desperate to see a totally Greek and a totally Greek 5-foot, 100-pound Elliot Page navigate the Mediterranean. Audiences wanted a legendary Greek voyage adapted faithfully from the source material, not a lecture in modern casting politics.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Sadly, this is what happens when Hollywood sabotages its own billion-dollar machine. For the last decade, studios have begged for approval from a tiny, hypersensitive fringe rather than making blockbusters normal people actually want to see. The cast didn't happen by accident, and it certainly wasn't built for the fans. It exists purely as a desperate top-down corporate mandate to force inclusion at the expense of entertainment. And yet, it is nothing more than pure hypocrisy. For nearly a century, Hollywood executives never gave a single shit about diversity. They cared about the money, the green. Then a certain orange man took office and the entire industry suffered a collective psychological meltdown. Suddenly, storytelling didn't matter anymore, and let the last 10 years be the only examples that you need. Casting became a political weapon, turning historical adaptations into progressive lectures just to spite a political enemy.
Not a great plan.
By prioritizing a loud internet minority and partisan spite over the paying ticket buyer, the industry completely forgot the basic rules of show business. They are repeating the exact same hubristic errors that have ruined every other major franchise this decade. As the old saying goes, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. To understand how we got here, we have to look at how casting actually functions, or completely fails at the corporate studio level. Let's go through the history, shall we? Blackface was a studio product. Yellowface was a studio product. Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's. John Wayne as Genghis Khan. Sean Connery as Asian James Bond in You Only Live Twice. This was a full century of casting decisions mandated by the capital allocators and primary debt holders who answer to absolutely nobody. None of them came from ticket buyers. All of them came from the institution. And when the institution gets caught, they just blame the financial realities. Take Exodus Gods and Kings in 2014. He had Christian Bale as Moses and Joel Edgerton as Rameses in an ancient Egyptian epic with white leads and actual Egyptian actors relegated to playing guards and thieves. Totally not a sellout, Ridley Scott explained he couldn't get the film financed with, and I quote, Mohammed so-and-so from such and such, end quote, in the lead. All that tells us then in 2014 was the casting followed financing, and financing follows name recognition. The film grossed $268 million on a $140 million budget. It was a bomb. Then came Gods of Egypt in 2016, featuring Scottish Gerard Butler and Danish Nikolai Coster-Waldau as Egyptian deities. It made $150 million against a $140 million budget. Total bomb. Some other notables: Ghost in a Shell, Aloha, Prince of Persia, The Last Airbender, Pan. The list runs long and the pattern is identical. The institution casts by convenience and defends it as a financial necessity, but tells the audience you need to do better.
You've got to do better, Senator.
Then somewhere around 2016, the institution repented, publicly and loudly. They manufactured a new rule: you must cast from the community being depicted. Scarlett Johansson was pressured out of playing a trans man in Rub and Tug. Halle Berry walked away from a similar role in 2020, calling her interest a mistake, as if we all haven't seen Catwoman. The film Coda cast actual deaf actors and won Best Picture. All the white voice actors of The Simpsons, a show that launched December 17, 1989, stepped down from characters of color only in 2020, which would become an industry-wide standard. Whatever you think of the rule, it existed. It had teeth, and careers adjusted to it. So, now apply that exact same rule to the most Greek story in existence. The Odyssey has 0 Greek actors in the principal cast. The film was shot in Greece, took advantage of their massive local tax incentives, and yet they didn't even bother to cast Greek leads or do a promotional tour there.
Well, how about that?
Why did the industry that built this authenticity requirement suddenly waive it for this movie? Cue John Leguizamo playing Eumeus.
What's been your Odyssey in terms of fighting for your identity or your Hollywood career?
Well, it's always been a battle. I mean, Hollywood is not the most accepting place. Even though we Latin people are 30 to 40% of the box office and a third of streamers, we're still not represented. We're the most underrepresented, aggressively underrepresented group in America. So that's been my odyssey, to try to bring some parity.
This is the same clown who has spent years writing op-eds and going on television complaining about Hollywood stealing Latino stories, arguing that roles must strictly go to the people whose cultures are being portrayed. But the moment he gets a massive studio payday, his principles vanish and the Odyssey is Nolan's masterpiece?
Well, how about that?
Both positions cannot govern at once. Either the community casting principle is sacred, non-negotiable artistic boundary, or it's a cheap political weapon to be wielded only when convenient by an elite group of pedophiles. Which brings us to the total death of casting. To understand why, you just have to run one simple test on every single name cast in this particular film. His draw as an individual lead is almost non-existent. The Martian released 11 years ago. Good Will Hunting was released 29 years ago. Every test on his own as a lead outside the Bourne franchise has since missed. Downsizing made $55 million on a $68 million budget. Stillwater made $19 million against a $20 million budget. The Last Duel made $30 million on a $100 million budget. Don't believe me? As of time of recording, a 6th Jason Bourne movie is actively in development at Universal Pictures. For Tom Holland, he has never been a box office draw in a film on his own. Spider-Man does billions of dollars because of the IP. His only individual lead, Chaos Walking, made $27 million on a $100 million plus budget. Cherry and The Crowded Room just went right to streaming. Zendaya has never carried a film on her own. Challengers did do $96 million on a $55 million budget, but that was a 3-lead ensemble sold on a viral campaign. Everything else is Spider-Man and Dune and franchise ledger money. Robert Pattinson's only individual win as a lead is Remember Me from 16 years ago, riding on the immediate Twilight success. Mickey 17 was one of the biggest box office disasters in recent years, with the film needing to make $300 million globally just to break even. The Batman and Twilight are inherited IP. Anne Hathaway only succeeds with a co-star sharing the weight. The Intern had way past his prime Robert De Niro, and Bride Wars had Kate Hudson. On her own as a co-lead, the movie Serenity in 2019 with Matthew McConaughey made $14 million on a $25 million budget. Her billion-dollar credits belong to Christopher Nolan and Disney. Charlize Theron's only individual lead hit is Monster, a $1.5 million indie movie sold on a true crime physical transformation. At blockbuster scale on her own, she has A Young Adult, which was $22 million, and Tully at $15.6 million. Atomic Blonde made $100 million, with her massive hits being Fast and Furious and Mad Max as part of a bigger ensemble cast. You see where I'm going with this?
What's your point, Vanessa?
And while Lupita Nyong'o holds a Best Supporting Oscar, her actual individual lead vehicle, the 355, was an ensemble that bombed horrendously. Us, Black Panther, A Quiet Place are all inherited corporate engines. Elliot Page has Juno from 2007, which was a $7.5 million indie. On his own, he has never moved the needle as a theatrical draw since. Everything else is Inception or X-Men. John Leguizamo is a character actor, not just an asshole. You have to go all the way back to 1997 to find the action comedy The Pest, and to 2002 to find the urban drama Empire that he actually led. The Pest finished its run with $3.6 million off an $8 million budget. And finally, John Bernthal has never truly led a major box office hit as a top-billed solo movie star. So there's nothing really I can give you there.
Well, how about that?
So now, before anyone objects that these names are simply not big enough, let's run the identical test on the 3 biggest stars the industry currently claims to have. And we can start with Tom Cruise. In 2022, Top Gun Maverick was finally released after 36 years, pulling in $1.5 billion worldwide, the loudest star power proof anyone had ever offered in a decade. But in 2023, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, the 7th movie in that franchise, made roughly $571 million on a massive $291 million budget, meaning a massive money loser after marketing. In 2025, The Final Reckoning, the 8th movie in that franchise, made roughly $598 million on a budget reported near $400 million, meaning another massive money loser after marketing.
Well, that sucks.
Same actor, same franchise muscle, and a swing of nearly $1 billion in 3 years. Maverick was 36 years of inherited nostalgia IP, a post-pandemic event moment, and reviews that gave a lapsed audience permission to return back to the theaters. Remove those exact conditions, and the biggest movie star alive posts 2 consecutive losses and studio write-downs.
Well, how about that?
Now for Margot Robbie. In December 2022, she starred in Babylon, which was an original film from the highly overrated Damien Chazelle, built entirely around her and Brad Pitt, 2 of the most famous faces on earth. It bombed, making roughly $63 million worldwide on an $80 million budget before marketing. Then in July 2023, she starred in Barbie and the film grossed $1.4 billion. Nobody forgot who Margot Robbie was between December and July. The IP, the concept, and the cultural campaign did the heavy lifting.
Well, how about that?
Dwayne Johnson makes the cleanest case of all because he was engineered by corporate algorithms to be the counterexample. He is the most followed actor on earth, with hundreds of millions of subscribers, cast for a decade on the explicit executive theory that social media reach converts movie tickets. What happened? Red One, Black Adam, Jungle Cruise, Skyscraper, Baywatch, and the most recently Moana, and The Smashing Machine, which was his big prestige pivot with A24 and real rewards intent. But it only opened to a bleak $6 million and its opening weekend on a $50 million budget, which I think it now sits around $20 million plus. I don't know. Quite simply, he became the industry's largest controlled experiment, proving that self-promotional brand reach does not price a single theatrical ticket. So now, what is the point of all this? But Sean, how am I supposed to attach a name and get my movie funded if investors and even the general public don't care about actors anymore and blah, blah, blah. My ass. You think that's a separate conversation? No. It's the exact same conversation. The indie finance world is changing because the studio world is rotting. Hollywood has stopped operating as a functional business or meritocracy. It is transformed into an ideological echo chamber that would rather burn hundreds of millions of dollars on a single film than admit its worldview is completely out of sync with the ticket-paying public. How do I know? Because when I saw the Odyssey, I was the only one in the theater watching this movie. The audience, or underrepresented communities, this movie was made for on the basis of diversity and inclusion, they didn't show up. That's not to say they won't, but now any movie that comes out these days is always about who it's made for in those unrepresented communities, and whether or not that particular audience can see themselves on screen, as if people can never achieve greater things in their own lives unless they see their exact reflection in a character. That is liberalism. Take that as you will. The official poverty rate in my Connecticut town is higher than the national average, and notably higher than the statewide average. The average median income is roughly $40,000. Only 24% of adults hold a bachelor's degree or higher, which is roughly half of the statewide baseline. A staggering 34% of our local households are classified as cost burden. This means more than 1/3 of families here are forced to spend over 30% of their total income just to keep a roof over their heads, leaving very little money for food, healthcare, or utilities. So when a global movie like this comes out, it's never really made for middle America. I would even say it's not even made for those people in Connecticut whom Hollywood is so certain it is championing, because these people can't even afford the $18 ticket to go sit for 3 hours to watch this film. They have to work. In fact, this movie wasn't even made for Greeks. It was made for Hollywood by Hollywood.
It was a happy place. They had flowery meadows and rainbow skies and rivers made of chocolate where the children danced and laughed and played with gumdrop smiles.
So the rules of casting are no longer about talent or commercial viability. They are a system of selective morality and political convenience masquerading as artistic principle. We are witnessing the slow motion collapse of a century-old cultural empire. The industry can no longer manufacture stars. It can no longer manufacture cultural consensus. And the old tricks are pulling smoke, not magic. The system is broken, desperately riding on the backs of a few remaining IP properties to delay the inevitable. For independent filmmakers raising capital today, this breakdown of the movie star myth isn't just an academic media critique. It completely rewires how you pitch, budget, and secure financing. If the old playbook of attaching an expensive name to mask a mediocre script is dead at the studio level, it is utterly extinct for independent cinema. The financing landscape is brutal, but it offers a massive strategic advantage to filmmakers who understand the new rules. So understand that smart financiers are heavily discounting traditional sales projections. They are looking at hard data trails and audience engagement, not actor reputations. They know that outside pre-sold corporate IP like Marvel or a tiny handful of massive auteur brands like Christopher Nolan, individual faces do not move the needle on ticket sales or streaming data. So, what is the solution? The board has been wiped entirely clean. Every bridge back to the mid-2010s indie boom has been burnt, and the gatekeepers of old are currently clinging to their own sinking ships. If you are waiting for a savior, like a prestige festival acquisition, an algorithmic streaming license fee that covers your budget, or a legacy agent to discover your script, you are waiting for a ghost. In 2026, self-reliance is the only viable business model. The classic indie financing hustle used to go that you pay a casting director to offer a name actor a pay-or-play deal, get a worthless letter of interest or LOI, and use that to trick foreign sales agents into pre-selling territories. International buyers now have real-time data. They know that attaching a B-list television star doesn't translate to digital rentals or theatrical tickets in Germany or South Korea. Financiers now discount actor attachments to virtually zero, unless they're one of maybe 5 people on Earth who actually move the needle, and those 5 people aren't doing your $2 million indie movie. And if your script relies on a famous face to make it interesting, your script is boring. Spend that casting budget on making the concept so undeniably sharp, high concept, or hyper-targeted that the logline does the selling for you. In a world without movie stars, genre is your equity. You cannot afford to make a quiet, mid-budget domestic drama unless you are funding it out of your own pocket. The 2026 capital market demands lean, mean, high-concept filmmaking. And lastly, stop pitching to traditional film funds or ultra-high net worth individuals that are paralyzed by fear and trying to protect their remaining assets. The capital structure of 2026 is decentralized, hyper-local, and strategic. So, here's the lesson. The academic data killed the movie star myth decades ago. Rabbit's 1999 study in the Journal of Business tested star presence against actual film profitability and found absolutely zero correlation. His rent capture finding is whatever extra revenue a massive star might generate, that star instantly extracts it back out of their upfront fee. The financer pays full price for the name, inherits the exact same risk profile, but takes on a much higher cost basis. The name is a line item expense. It is never collateral. The legendary economist Arthur Devaney proved box office returns follow a heavy tail distribution, meaning hits are inherently unpredictable. No single input, including a multi-million-dollar movie star, can reduce that variance. And because hits are a total roll of the dice, no studio executive can ever be proven wrong for casting a big name, which is exactly what makes the name incredibly valuable to the executive and utterly worthless to the private investor. This is what sociologists DiMaggio and Powell call mimetic behavior. Under extreme uncertainty, organizations simply imitate each other to purchase legitimacy. And legitimacy has an asymmetric payoff. Fail while following the corporate ritual and you're immediately forgiven. But fail while trying something original and your career is finished. Nobody ever got fired in Hollywood for attaching Matt Damon. That political asymmetry, not some magical belief in actual ticket sales, is what a $20 million actor quote actually buys. When results are radically uncertain, institutions will always substitute rituals of legitimacy for actual evidence. They will keep paying for the ritual long after the data kills it, because the ritual protects their corporate careers, while the data only protects your money. And that is the missing link. Your entire indie film practice sits right in that gap. The star attachment is the idea the gatekeeper puts in your head to keep you playing their losing game. But if you aren't a studio executive trying to protect a corporate salary, you should shouldn't be buying into their corporate rituals. You need a structure built for the real world. A risk-adjusted project profile is a highly specific engineered financial structure designed to decouple a movie's profitability from its mainstream box office performance. It is a business model that assumes zero star power, zero legacy studio distribution, and zero mass market appeal, yet still guarantees a return on capital. That is the work of Wrap Consulting. What is your risk-adjusted project profile? Start building for yourself.
Here I come. Oh, here I come.
If you don't know what that blueprint looks like, start with Wrap Consulting. Everything you have been sold about this process was built to keep you chasing access, validation, and hope. It was never built to tell you the truth. The old guard is dead, and the days of middlemen, parasitic brokers, 20 useless executive producers, and needing a star attachment or a legacy distribution are over. Return all that shit to the sender. If you have found value in this breakdown, thank you for your time. Please hit like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If it wasn't for you, I appreciate you sticking around anyway. I will see you all next time.
Matt Damon! Matt Damon!